What's your homeowners association horror story? Our HOA ordered us to clean our recently power washed black shingle roof because all the shingles were so dirty they turned black. My good friend had a story. Her and the husband moved into this gated community. She loves having a bird bath in her backyard. And she gardens a lot. So the decoration makes sense. Turns out our HOA figured out that she had said bird bath in her backyard. Apparently bird bath equals lawn ornament. Which was forbidden. She told them she would remove it. A week later she gets another message saying that it hasn't been removed. It wasn't. Obviously her and the husband put it together that the HOA is snooping in her backyard. For a week. She spends her time outside sunbathing in the nude setting her trap. Sure enough a HOA narc opens the gates to their backyard and sees her in the nude. Instant call to the police for privacy violations. The HOA gave up and let her have a bird bath. She is now on the board of the HOA and they leave her alone. My ex-BFF's father was part of the homeowners board for their townhouse community. His wife would walk their dog around the entire neighborhood every day and carry a notebook to write infractions to report back to her husband. Ridiculous stuff. Neighbors have a window A. C. Unit. Reported and fined. Have a garden that's a square foot too big. Reported and fined. Some people have absolutely no lives. Edit. Spelling. My HOA horror stories all revolve around dealing with them as a dispatcher. The fact that a HOA doesn't want cars parked on their street has nothing to do with whether or not it's legal to do so. And there really is no argument. The police can't legally tow a car that isn't parked in violation of any law. Regardless of what you like or don't like. But they will argue and want to talk to the chief of police. Sigh. Edit. I'm referring to cars parked on public streets within the neighborhood. As indicated by the statement isn't parked in violation of any law. Since parking a car on someone's private property without that person's permission doesn't apply to that statement. It's obviously not what I meant. My father-in-law's condo corp has a shared pool. The old folks don't like to share. So they have all kinds of silly rules. Like no more than one guest per resident. Residents only times alternating every hour. Etc. My Phil can't even take his own 2 grandkids for a swim because he'd exceed the number of allowed guests. So many rules the damn pool is usually empty. Because the residents were still breaking the rules. They passed a new rule that if any resident was caught breaking the pool rules, they would close the pool to everyone for a week and post the offender's name and reason for the closure on the community bulletin board. F-king children. I would just constantly break a rule every week. Only plant oak trees even after multiple arborists and botanists informed the board that doing so would give all of them various diseases and all would need to be cut down. 10 years later, all have been cut down because they have diseases and mites. Fined multiple times and threatened with a lien by the HOA because we would not water our grass during a major drought season. It was cheaper and easier to fight the HOA since the city and state passed regulations banning constant watering and green grass. The city had Google-like vans with cameras that'd be driving neighborhoods to catch violators and find them. Super illegal. HOA can't make any regulations requiring homeowners to break city, state, federal laws or regulations. They sent us a series of nasty notices to remove the dead tree in our front yard. The tree had lost all of its leaves and it was unsightly. Apparently. The catch is that they sent us this notice in November. You know. Like. Fall. When perfectly healthy trees lose their leaves. We pretended we didn't understand which tree they were talking about until spring. When the tree magically came back to life. When my sister was hit by a drunk driver. The insurance took a few days to decide what to do with her car since it was a weekend. Neighbor called the police and said it was abandoned and had been there for months. Luckily, the police took our side. They pulled up an accident report showing that car across town 2 days ago. Then told her to FCK off. Is there a law that states that the police can fine people lying about informal complaints that waste their time? Imagine if these schtheads had to pay the cops $50 and be told to FCK off every time they called the police with frivolous bullshit like that. Also, I take it your sister was okay? When I was a kid I lived in one of the two front rooms of the house, which were the hottest in the summer and the coldest in the winter. My dad didn't like to use the AC, so we all just had fans. One summer it got so unbearably hot in my room that fans just weren't cutting it and I was miserable. My dad then put an AC unit in my window and it was awesome. But it was short-lived because the hoa told us to take it down because it was an eyesore. My parents told them it was for their child but they didn't care. So my parents had to take it down. The kicker is that just down the street, a guy who had the exact same model house as us had an AC unit installed in the same exact window as the one we had it in. And the hoa never said a word to him. Not mine but a friend's hoa. Was watching a friend's house cat while she was away. Left my car at her house. In her deeded spot. With a visitor tag on it. To drop her off at the airport. Then went home to my house. Slept. Went to work. Returned after work the next day to feed cat. Check mail. And get my own car back. No car. Call her on vacation. She finds property MGMT phone. I call. They tell me it was towed as it had a flat tire. $290 later. For tow. Overnight storage. And a flat fix I had my car back. FCK those assholes. The car wasn't even there 24 hours. And it wasn't flat when I parked it. Everyone in our neighborhood received fines for leaving garage cans at the road. It was trash day. Not mine but one of my good friends has a rather insane hoa. They actually used rented surveying equipment to determine that his clothesline was 1 inch taller than his fence and fined him several $100s for some stupid structure beyond the fence rule they had. Same hoa has someone walking around actually measuring the length of grass with a ruler and issuing warnings for mowing. My hoa decided that my trim needed to be painted right now. Threatened a $100 a month fine if it wasn't. The trouble is that it was January. And I live near Chicago. As I was buying the paint, the salesperson keeps telling me that the paint won't dry. It will just freeze. And fall off within 6 months. I was selling in the spring anyway. So I didn't care. Painted the trim in a temperature of 7 degrees Fahrenheit. Fkes. My brother lives in a neighborhood with a very strict hoa. His neighbor, 27-year-old woman, passed away in a tragic accident leaving behind her husband and 3 children. Hoa fined the family because the people visiting the family for the funeral couldn't all fit in the driveway, so some parked on the side of the street. Not me but a friend said they don't allow fences not made from wood. But the lieutenant governor of my state bought a house there. Put up a vinyl fence. And they won't make him remove it. Who's more wrong? Not allowing the fencing for others? Or he for being allowed? When we moved in we got permission to build a fence. They said cedar treated pine was fine. Well, a neighbor didn't like that and called hoa. We got an email shortly thereafter from Hoa Prees that there were some concerns about our wood. So he came by real quick to give it a good sniff to see if it was, in fact, not cedar. He is now king fence sniffer. Edit. Pine boards treated to look like cedar. Y'all are teaching me a lot about wood. Our Hoa hired a management company to run the day-to-day business. What that meant was a guy would ride around taking pictures of petty bullshit and mailing violations to homeowners. I had so many quarrels over nothing. Well, it turns out the Hoa didn't have any teeth behind the violations since the bylaws didn't allow fines. Somebody came up with the bright idea to start imposing fines to ensure compliance. That is when I ran for and won the vice presidency of the board. Another gentleman who was fed up with this crap ran and won as well. We didn't have the power to dissolve the Hoa. But we decided the next best thing was to paralyze it. Without us in attendance, the board could never reach quorum to conduct business. And they never did. Not me but my sister. Her front door broke because some delivery people f'd up and she had it replaced. Apparently it was the wrong color according to the Hoa, and she would be fined $500 a week unless it's corrected or removed. Because it's totally fine to not have a front door in LA. Another is from a sweet old lady that invited me in for tea and cookies when I was house hunting. The Hoa there was $285 a month, below average for Sokol, and she told me that while she didn't mind the committee so much, she wasn't happy when 2 of her potted plants were shattered by kids playing ball around her house, and the Hoa wanted to fine her $65 a day until she has them removed from her front yard. I ended up buying a home without Hoa. How much do you have to suck at deliveries that you break the f***ing door? Let me paint you a scene. A young married couple finds their first apartment, and although it is far from perfect, it is spacious and 2 minutes away from work. Mind you, this is the beginning of August. In South Florida. On the day we move in, we see a letter posted for the Hoa stating that someone has to be present in our unit while the workers are there to work on the central cooling unit. Okay. No big deal. I have the ability to work from home sometimes. So I did. Well, at the end of those 2 days, workers were to be there from 8 AM to 5 PM. We were told that the project was bigger than expected. And found out exactly what was happening. They were replacing the piping of all 22 units in our complex. And we were lucky enough to have one of 2 points of access to the roof, in our bedroom closet. That roof access was utilized for 24 days out of the month of August, anywhere from 114 hours a day. TL. DR. Newlyweds spent first month of marriage alongside AC repairmen. Also, we still don't have functioning central air. Seems illegal. When we were privately renting in a townhome community, the dumpster had video surveillance so that the Hoa could find anyone breaking the rules as far as what we were allowed to dump. One day both myself and So get a bitchy call from our property manager alerting us that Hoa has fined $250 for illegal dumping. The property owner will have to pay it and we will have to reimburse him. After racking our brains about what we could have possibly thrown out that wasn't allowed, we decided to call up the Hoa to see if we could see the video. They would either transfer us to someone else that would hang up, or their hours would change to where no one would answer the phone, or they'd promise to get the video to us the next day, etc. This went on for about 2 weeks. Finally my So got to see the video while I was at work. I texted him to find out what was on it, and he said the video was of a middle-aged Asian lady throwing out a bunch of furniture. It was the stupid property owner's freaking wife. I used to work for a major paint company, and on one particular delivery the painter told me that his grandmother had passed away unexpectedly in the house, so he was repainting to get rid of the lingering smell. He showed me an itemized bill where the Hoa charged the family $100 an hour for the time the coroner spent parked in the driveway. Obviously he refused to pay it and he ended up selling the house. They tried to charge him $200 for having the wrong light fixture next to the front door, but Hoas are just petty old people with nothing better to do. Hoa said there was a surplus of funds and sends out a survey to find out what people want the money spent on: swimming pool, basketball court, etc. A few months later we get a notice that they're raising the dues because they need more money to afford all the new amenities we requested. The entire board was voted out the following year. When my brother first moved into his condo, quiet hours were 10 PM 6 AM Sunday Thursday. Never really enforced. A couple years later 2 board members sold. 2 new came on board. One being a 60-year-old man. Quiet hours are now 8 PM to 6 AM Sunday Thursday. 10-6 Friday Saturday. The 60-year-old guy will knock on your door if he thinks you are too loud. It's a very young metro neighborhood. Loft complex. The old guy came to his door to complain a couple weeks ago BC he thought the pizza delivery guy was too loud. Pound on his door at 2 AM every night complaining that he's making too much noise. When he says he was sleeping, tell him he was screaming in his sleep. Don't let the man sleep until you have crushed him. Friend of mine was in middle of potential foreclosure and only way to prevent was to lease their house and rent a room from me for discount. Hoa denied since complex was at least capacity. They ended up foreclosing. Pretty sure the foreclosure lowered the property values. Not sure I understand the hoa's decision. My friend stopped paying their dues when the denial was made. I was written up for having my hose on the ground while I was in the process of installing the thing to hang the hose on. They literally came by when I stepped inside. My neighbor was also written up for having a box on his porch. It was an Amazon package that had been delivered that while he was at work. Not my story, but a friend's. The hoa had an issue about a painting inside the house. It could be seen through the front windows and they didn't like it for some reason. Edit. There was some nudity in the painting. So that's why they were so bothered by it. We've been out of internet and cable since Christmas and it doesn't look like we will get it back until the end of the month since our hoa will deal with the lowest bidder. Your hoa handles everybody's internet? What the FCK? So it was a new community and my family just bought a house. So once all the other houses got built, this lady says she is going to start the hoa as per our agreement in the contract. So they call for a block party. No one shows up. A month later, another gathering at their home. No one shows up. 6 months pass by, call for a meet and greet at the community mailboxes. No one shows up. 2 months later we get a letter asking for dues. Us and our neighbors next door and across the street talk about no one paying and we spread the word to our other 30 neighbors and the hoa died. Not a hoa. But the renter's agent guy sent me a letter on the 29th of November saying I had to pay a $100 noise complaint fee because I was up walking around at night. I am a big guy and live on the second story of this small apartment complex. The letter stated that the fee was due by the 26th of November or else more fees would be applied. It was dated the 29th of November. Checked my lease to see if they could even charge me the fee. And it said that if police were called, a fine of up to $100 per incident may be issued. Police were never called. Just my elderly downstairs neighbors calling the agent and complaining. They vetoed a cell tower because it would be ugly and we still have garbage service at home because of it. An association tried that by me. They voted it down. They approached my wife's boss. Moved the tower 100 feet. Now they still have to look at it but get no money from it. So a friend of mine's old boss. Dude built a successful HVAC supplier. Still had his first car. Etc. Didn't give a shit about spending the money he has been making. Wife wanted a fancy house. So he bought a McMansion kind of place in the suburbs. New house. So the trees are young. One doesn't survive the winter. So he takes it out. Hoa says you have to replace it. He says no. And one day he gets home and there's a new tree in the front yard and a bill in his mailbox. They go back and forth and eventually all his trees are uprooted and lying in the street. So he takes them to court and tells his lawyer to drag it out until legal fees bankrupt the hoa. Then he replaces all the trees, including the first one that started it all. Most recent one was this year. They sent a letter saying no Christmas decorations until 12/1. And they all had to come down before 1/3. They also sent a wall list of forbidden ornaments, including anything inflated or not in keeping with the spirit of the season. So basically all the light-hearted funny ornaments. Look out the window, kids. It's the Grinch's sad F-King cave. Anyway, we had beautiful weather on Black Friday, but had to wait until things got cold again before we could get out there and put up lights. Then, after New Year's Day, we had exactly 1 day to take down all our lights. And the wind chill was -25. Naturally we decided FCK that. There's no way they bill anybody for this. And opted to just leave the lights unplugged. We got a bill before 10 AM on the 3rd. My cousin moved into a house with an hoa. They spent several months chasing after him for the former owner's missed hoa payments and threatened legal action. He was not legally responsible, but they kept hounding him. Eventually he lawyered up to stop the harassment. My hoa had a Christmas incentive. If you could catch a neighbor on camera not picking up their dog's mess, you would get a monetary reward. The neighbor was fined $100, Hoa kept $50 and the person who turned them in got the other $50. There was an episode of the X-Files called Arcadia in which a monster made out of garbage killed everyone who violated Hoa rules. I've been scared of them since the late 90s. It's also a fantastic comedic episode. Mulder and Scully go undercover as a married couple named Rob and Laura.